Patrick Ewing is one of the greatest Knicks of all time and a top 75 player in league history. He came into the league with controversy already around his name and instantly injected new life into one of basketball's greatest meccas, Madison Square Garden. Ewing joined a weak Knicks team that was struggling to sell tickets and win games. First 2 years, the team didn't see much of a rise in wins, but as Ewing began coming into his own, third year where he posted stats of 20 points, 8 rebounds with 1.5 steals and 3 blocks, was named an All-Star for the second time, the Knicks began to win more games. But this isn't all due to Ewing. The team also made smart additions of hiring a new head coach in Rick Pianto, drafting rookie Mark Jackson, and adding solid role players in Sidney Green and Johnny Newman. The team's record jumped up from 24 wins and 58 losses the previous year to 38 wins and 44 losses, good for a playoff berth out east, where they lost in the first round to Larry Bird and the Celtics. Ewing looked good in the series, posting a monster defensive effort, averaging 3.3 blocks and 1.5 steals, while giving the Knicks a double-double of 19 points and 13 rebounds each night. Year 4, the Knicks built on their success from last year, jumping up to a record of 52 wins and 30 losses. Ewing was named an All-Star for the third time, named to All-NBA second team for the second year in a row, and named to his second All-Defensive team. Ewing looked dominant on both ends, and the team's offense was running smoothly. The Knicks matched up with the 76ers in the first round and took care of business easily. However, in the next round, Ewing's Knicks would have their first matchup with MJ's Bulls, and the start of the two teams' rivalry and the two stars rivalry began. Ewing was good in the series, posting 21 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists with 1.8 blocks and 1.3 steals, but the Knicks fell to the Bulls in 6 games. The 1989-90 season is the best offensive team Ewing ever led, finishing as the 6th best offensive team in the league that year. Next year was a similar story with a slightly worse record with a new head coach. The Knicks finished the year 45-37. Ewing, however, put together his best statistical season ever, averaging a monster 28 points, 11 rebounds with 4 blocks and 1 steal, and was named to his only NBA first team that year. However, the team's offense was worse despite Ewing's numbers, dropping from 111 in offensive rating in 89 to 109.4 in 90. When it came to the playoff times, Ewing exploded in the first round matchup against Larry Bird and the Celtics, dropping 31 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists with 1.8 steals and 1.8 blocks. In the next round, the Knicks matched up against the defending bad boy Pistons, and despite a strong performance from Ewing, the Knicks were handled in 5 games. Up till this point, the Knicks had failed to make it out of the first round despite a major star in Patrick Ewing. The team seemed to lack the firepower needed to take out the top dogs of the East. The Knicks were a bruising defense first team built off the rim protection provided by Ewing down low, but as he aged, his feet began to move slow and he lacked some of the vertical leaping of his earlier days. In 1991, the Knicks continued to slip, dropping down to a sub-500 record, finishing outside of the top 12 in defensive rating throughout the game, as well as offensive rating throughout the game. The Knicks somehow still found themselves in the playoffs, where they would match up against the MJ-led Bulls again, and it was not pretty. Game 1, the Bulls killed the Knicks and completely shut down Ewing, limiting him to 6 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 assist in only 27 minutes due to him being in foul trouble. This was Ewing's worst playoff showing up to this point, and the Bulls went on to win the game by 41, scoring an absolute unheard of 126 points to 85. No one else stepped up for the Knicks on the offensive end, a pretty common theme with the Ewing's Knicks throughout his whole career. Ewing tried to keep the Knicks in the series, and in the next game, the Bulls were able to keep bothering Ewing, making him go 80 for 22 and finishing the night only scoring 24 points and 10 rebounds. The Knicks lost by 10, 89-79. The Knicks were back home in MSG and were hoping to get one back on the Bulls, but the game played like the last one, with Ewing taking every shot he could and missing a lot, finishing the night 7 for 16 with 20 points. Did make up for it on the glass, grabbing 14 rebounds. Once again, the Knicks lacked the offensive firepower to hang with the top teams and lost by 9, 103-94. No one on the Knicks put up more than 18 points per game that series, and Ewing had his worst playoff series, putting up a lowly 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists, shooting only 40% from the field, and he turned the ball over 3.6 times. The Knicks needed change, and that came in the form of Pat Riley as a new head coach, and the additions of defensive forward Xavier McDaniels and Anthony Mason. Coming off his worst playoff showing, This is where I want to take a step back and talk about Ewing's overall offensive game. Ewing had a pretty versatile offensive game. He could catch and shoot from the mid-range, attack in transition, and post you up down low, where he could go to a turnaround jumper or hit guys with a quick move to get a hook shot off. He was an okay passer of the low post, where the Knicks would use him sometimes as a hub, and he was capable of hitting basic cutters, but wasn't great at kicking the ball back out after you went to score, and lacked the vision to read the floor. This lack of creation limited the types of offenses you could run with Ewing as a low post hub. Despite this, he was still a really good free throw shooter for a big of the time and had solid value on that end. The Knicks front office definitely did fail to find a Ewing a perimeter offensive star to pair alongside him during his prime, but I don't think he would fit alongside a ball dominant guard or wing. Ewing was a weak off-ball player due to his weak offensive rebounding, never posting a season with an offensive rebound percentage of 12 or higher, really low compared to a lot of other great bigs from his time, and this lack of fight on the offensive glass and lack of easy points from putback limited Ewing's offensive game, especially come playoff time. This limited offensive lift from Ewing is reflected in the Knicks' offensive rating throughout the game through Ewing's reign with the team. Outside of the 1989-90 season and 1991-92 seasons, the Knicks finished with an offensive rating throughout the game below league average in every one of his years. This came back to bite the Knicks in the playoffs, where Ewing lacked the passing and high efficient scoring to have a great offensive run throughout the playoffs, and the team around him wasn't good enough to take that pressure off of him. His numbers reflect this. 9 out of his 13 postseason runs, he had a negative relative true shooting, which is not comparing his numbers to today's standards, but to the standards of the time. He was just never efficient come playoff time, and that's a fact. He also was, like I said, a poor passer, never being able to create more than 5 shots for his team during his stretch. And yes, you could look at his 1990 playoff run, where he averaged 29 points per game, or per 75 on plus 6.1 relative true shooting, but I see this postseason run as an outlier and not his normal scoring talent. What supports this is in his very next postseason run, he averaged 18.7 points per 75 on minus 1.6 relative true shooting. But we all know where Ewing really made his impact was on the defensive side of the ball. Ewing's Knicks set records for their elite defense from 1970 to 2007. No team has put together a better 5-year stretch, and the only 2 teams to do so since were KG Celtics and Tim Duncan Spurs. The Knicks were a top 10 defensive team 11 out of his 15 seasons, and the Knicks were only outside of the top 13 on defense twice, both being in his first 2 seasons in the league. Ewing was an elite shot blocker with the reach and leaping ability to swat anything in his early years. In his early years, he was a bit overeager and would bump on pump fakes and get into foul trouble a lot, but as he grew older and had more reps, he cut down on these bad habits. He was also pretty good at reading passing lanes for a big and was able to average a steal for his entire prime. Ewing was a beast in transition, using his long strides to race back and contest shots at the rim, often blocking or stopping opponents' fast breaks through his sheer presence. Ewing was a touch slow at times to leave his man and commit to contesting a shot. Ewing was a beast on the defensive glass thanks to his size and good positioning around the basket, which makes his poor offensive rebounding numbers even more confusing to me. The Knicks liked to trap out of the pick and roll, and Ewing was good at it, as he was able to step out and bother a guard, then quickly rotate back to his man. As he got older, he slowed down and was a touch slow recovering or reacting. The Knicks had many good defenders around Ewing and were coached by elite defensive coaches, but Ewing was the heart that kept the Knicks defense elite no matter what. Patrick Ewing is one of the greatest Knicks ever and one of the greatest big men of his era, and a top 75 player of all time who was able to lead the Knicks to the finals and was able to keep his team in the playoffs 13 out of his 15 seasons with the Knicks. Ewing was an elite shot blocker and one of the best defenders of his era. He was also able to lead the team on the offensive side, but was a tier below other offensive stars. All of this rightfully earned him a place on the top 75 list with his record-setting defense. Ewing, however, did have his flaws as a player. He was limited as a passer and an offensive rebounder, and despite having a nice mid-range turnaround and a smooth hook, his post moves and games were slightly limited and relied on tough shot making, which is a shaky recipe for success, and he would sometimes underperform in the playoffs, including a 1-point game in a loss to the Pacers and 14 games scoring 15 and under. I think the biggest knock on Patrick is his playoff performance. I think the biggest positives of Ewing's career is his longevity. He came into the league and made an immediate impact and went to the playoffs 13 out of his first 15 years. He was an 11-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, and could say the front office failed him and they did let him down. never pairing him with an elite outside option who could take the pressure of scoring off of him. But like I said, I don't know how much value he would provide in a system where he wasn't focused or featured more on the offensive side. Ewing is a legend of our game, and I think he deserves a lot more shine. I prepare for this, I had to watch a lot of games, and just watching games from the 90s and seeing those guys, seeing these stars of old play really is inspiring, and just like shows you how the game has evolved from 1989, 90s, bruising bigs downloading the post to guys like Joel Embiid and Jokic today. And I think Patrick Ewing is one of the greatest players of all time and one of my favorite players, and I really enjoyed learning more about him and developing a greater appreciation for him in his offensive game and defensive game.